Hello and welcome to Sea Talk, and welcome to our Mental Health and Wellbeing Conference. Now, we spend a lot of time here at Sea Talk talking to members of the retail sector from all over the country. We know how much you love the work that you do, but we also know just how hard you work. So hard, in fact, that I recently learned that 78% of you put the health of your business first before your own personal well-being. Now, hard work and dedication can take its toll. We know this, especially in an ever-changing business landscape with lots of ups and lots of downs. We want to make sure that the convenience community are equipped to look after themselves and look after each other. So joining me today to help us do just that, we have Alpesh Shingadia, a Budgeons retailer from Southwater. We have Midlands-based psychotherapist Marguerite Elcock, and from Suntory, Andy Pheasant. Alpesh, welcome to Sea Talk.
Hi, nice to meet you, Jake.
And you, mate, and you. First of all, look, I know who you are, but not everybody who's watching this conference is going to know who you are. So very first thing, introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business.
So yeah, my name's Alpesh Shingadia. I operate two Budgeons stores in West Sussex, one in Horsham and one in Southwater. Obviously part of the family business. Store's been operating for nearly 40 years now. Currently, obviously, do have quite a large team working with us. We've got around maybe 30 or so people that we have to look after on a day-to-day basis. But at the moment, yeah, trade is good. But also keen to get talking about obviously mental health and mental health awareness within the industry.
Well, brilliant. And look, in keeping with the theme of the conference, how are you doing, man? How is business? How are you getting on this year?
So we've just gone through two major store refits. So it's been long and difficult, but it's been great. I mean, the feedback from the team, from the customers has been really fantastic. And that's obviously one of the key reasons why you do it, is just to stay obviously relevant within the local area. But yeah, apart from the refits, trade is good. And like I said, yeah, we're just dealing with everything as well as we can. But yeah, apart from that, yeah, nothing really else is going on.
Fantastic. Look, I've heard a lot of retailers say that, refits can be really stressful in the moment, but they always pay off. They always pay off in the end. Look, you're obviously a veteran of this business. You've been doing this for a long time. You've got multiple stores. So you're the best person, I think, to ask this question, which is, what do you think are, across the retail and convenience sector, what are the most common causes of stress and anxiety that we really need to be aware of sector wide?
I mean, it's different for different retailers. Retailers who maybe have just one site or multiple. So I think it's not ever the same with retailers. But I think specifically to me, I'd say I think probably the key thing that maybe all retailers to fair can probably relate to is staffing issues. I think that's a real stress factor, whether it's from recruitment to retention, even just to dealing with teams, on a day-to-day basis, whether, for example, somebody calls in ill and you've got to find cover to, just like I said, dealing with them and expectations and keeping on top of the team. There's just general trade, whether it's, trade is good or trade is obviously quite poor, competition as well, and obviously just general expenses, costs, obviously with the living wage cost increase coming up as well. That's obviously quite puts a lot of pressure on people. Obviously electricity as well is a big hot topic on that. So there are lots of different things that can play a factor with a retailer. And obviously, retailers obviously have a life outside the business. So obviously they've got that obviously feeding in, because a lot of the time it's obviously fed into the business, a lot of their attention, and obviously then some other aspects in their life will get neglected. And obviously retailers, should be aware of that and then should try and find a balance. I mean, it's easier said than done, but I think it's very relevant and important for retailers to actually, like I said, try and find that balance, and try not obviously make sure it doesn't come at a cost to the retailer as well. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. And I've got a statistic in front of me right now, Alpesh, saying that a huge number of retailers are working more than 70 hours a week. they're working incredible hours, incredibly hard, and an awful lot of them, a huge number of retailers in the sector, are working with family members inside the context of a family business. These are people that they see at work and at home. And I don't know if your business is the same.
It is.
It is. It is. You're a family
It is
business.
the same, yeah, we're a family business, yeah.
Well, like so many in the industry. And I wonder then, do you have any strategies personally or any advice for retailers on how to find that work-life balance, especially when you've got family members in business with you?
So first of all, don't live with them. No, joking. Luckily, I don't live with them, so I can, for example, when it comes to whatever time I finish during the day, I can just leave. But I think, yeah, when you, for example, when you're at work, it is obviously at work, and I think then when you meet them outside, when it's socially, you've just got to draw that line. Say, right, let's just talk about work, because then work can just consume, your work life with them as well as your social side, and that's also a real key thing that I'm very aware, and so I don't like to draw the line with that, because at the end of the day, family's family, and it's also important to obviously talk about other things apart from work. So like I said, after a certain time in the day, I just completely shut off. And when we meet socially, it's just about us personally or other things going on in their life.
Amazing. Well, Alpesh, look, you're obviously so knowledgeable on this subject, and there are 1,001 questions that I want to ask you, but I think it's going to have to be a conversation for another day, because I'm going to have to move on, because we are running out of time for this conference. But we'd love to have you back to have more conversations about this, because I think it would be really, really valuable for the whole sector and the whole community. So thank you so much for coming on. Don't go anywhere. I will come back to you before the end.
No worries, Jake. Thanks. Speak to you in a bit.
Marguerite, welcome to Sea Talk.
Hi, Jake. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming on. I mean, obviously, you are someone who knows a great deal about this as a working psychotherapist. Now, you've had your professional fingers in an awful lot of pies. I've heard you on the radio. I've seen you on Talk TV doing television spots. You've interacted with a lot of different industries, not just the convenience and retail sectors. So I wanted to start by asking you a kind of broad strokes question, and that is, do you think that the retail industry is not alone in seeing a general increase in workplace stresses and workplace anxieties?
Absolutely. I think workplace stress and workplace anxiety just cannot be underestimated. It's a particular area of interest for me. I'm, in actual fact, doing a research project at the moment with the University of Wolverhampton, looking particularly at stress at work for lawyers. But stress affects everyone in the workplace, because it's really, really difficult to separate our home lives from our work lives. We're surrounded by those external stressors that happen to us. It might be that email that comes in. It might be, as Alpesh said so eloquently earlier, working with family members, taking those things from the family into the workplace. It's all the worries that everyone has, paying their bills, managing difficult situations. So yeah, workplace stress is something I think it's not very well researched, and it's quite underestimated, but it's so important to get out into the kind of discussions that we're having today.
Brilliant. And one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have you on this conference is because you understand a lot of the science behind stress. You understand the neuroscience and how these things work. So what I wanted to ask you, for the benefit, I think, of the whole sector, is how can we, as people who don't necessarily understand the science, recognize that we need to take action to start looking after ourselves and the people who are working with us?
That's a really great question, Jake. Stress is normal. I think it's really important to start from that perspective. Stress is a physiological response. When we were early humans, and we were out there and we were chasing saber-toothed tigers, we had what's called the fight or flight response. So you see something that worries you, you see something that scares you, immediately your body goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And we know those responses. Fight, I'm going to tackle this. Flight, I'm going to run away from it. Freeze, I'm a rabbit in the headlights. Fawn, how can I get my way out of this? And those are responses that probably we recognize in people around us and in ourselves. And they happen because a tiny part of our brain, which is called the amygdala, sends out messages and sends out hormones to our body, and it puts us into that state of getting ready to deal with stress. Now, there's two types of stress, Jake. There's distress and there's eustress. So negative stress and positive stress. And so one of the things I think it's important to teach people is how to turn that negative stress response, that, oh my gosh, my heart's beating faster, my palms are sweating, my tummy feels nervous, from a negative experience into something that you can use more positively to go, I can perform better, I can tackle this situation better, I can deal with my fears, I can actually get on with it and turn this into something that we as a business, in the case that we're talking about here, can really accept and get on with. But also, I think it's about recognizing, and Alpesh touched on this, about teamwork. Most small convenience businesses we know are family businesses, or they're run by small teams of people. And if people can get together as a team and accept that there are these stressors, talk about them, and then come up with ways within their business that they can actually strategize to have some positive inputs to make things a little bit better. And there are some very quick, easy wins that I think you can do around that.
So fostering a supportive community in and around the store is something you think is very, very important.
Absolutely. That was studied by a chap many, many years ago called Maslow, who came up with a thing called the hierarchy of needs. And one of the things that Maslow talked about was the fact that we need to belong, and fostering that sense of belonging. A small business owner is a team. They are acting their ship effectively, aren't they? And so fostering a culture in which it's okay to say, do you know what? I'm finding this difficulty at the moment. It's causing me some stress, but I recognize that actually it's causing you as my team members some stress too. Just accepting and acknowledging is a good starting point.
Well, before I have a quick chat with Andy, and I'll let you go for a bit, help us do that. I know that you have a lot of practical exercises to deal with stress and help increase your moment-to-moment well-being. What's a quick and easy exercise that someone can run just to recenter themselves?
I always start with what's called tension release breathing. Breathing is our superpower. It genuinely is. And I'm not talking about sort of yogic, mindful sort of, crystals and things like that. Everything that I talk about is scientific and evidence-based because I'm a psychotherapist. But tension release breathing involves breathing in through the nose, holding that breath, and then breathing out through the mouth. In and hold and out. And that slows down that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. It slows down the chemicals, the hormones that come out of the amygdala that send us into that sense of feeling panicked and anxious. And so it's a really good place to start. So today, if you're out and about at work and you find something that's very stressful, just try starting with a little bit of tension release breathing.
Marguerite, thank you for that. Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. I will bring you back very briefly before the end. I'm going to go and jump over and have a quick chat with Andy. Thank you so much.
See you soon, Jake.
Andy, welcome to Sea Talk.
Morning.
Morning. Thank you so much for coming on. So first of all, I know who you are as a member of the sector, but not everybody is necessarily going to know who you are who's watching this. So very quickly, like I did with Alpesh, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. So Andy Pheasant, I work for Suntory. Within Suntory, I look after a team of regional account managers, but the one part of my role that is sort of relevant to this sector is I head up our retailer engagement plans. So that's how us as a business work with our retailers up and down the country and try and bring some of these key issues to life as well, such as mental health, which is why we're here today.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, obviously, you are engaging with a lot of retailers all over the country and you're hearing from them all the time. So my first question for you is this, mate. What can suppliers who have a huge amount of professional engagement do to help retailers manage their stress and just increase their day-to-day well-being?
For me, I suggest getting out there, listening to retailers, trying to find out what those barriers are, what it is that's really causing those issues. So one thing that we're doing as a business is we've created a competition called Win the Weekend. So we're going to give one lucky retailer the opportunity to take a weekend away from work. They're going to have an all expenses paid weekend break worth up to £5,000. The reason why we're doing this, and you mentioned this stat earlier, is that 78% of retailers are saying that they value the health of their business over their own mental health. So we really want to shine a beacon on that and how we can help.
That's amazing. And I've got another statistic, if I don't want to go too much into the numbers, but 26%, I think, is what I've got in front of me, of retailers have taken no holiday, no break whatsoever in a year. And an awful lot of retailers have gone even longer without taking any kind of break away from the store. So to hear about the Win the Weekend competition is fantastic. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing as a company. Is it something that you hope to carry on into the future?
Absolutely, 100%. So but basically, Win the Weekend all came about. So I attended an ACS local shop report back in 2021, and we heard there how much retailers were struggling to take time away from their own business. And I struck up a conversation there with a retailer who was a single site owner who had not taken a day off in 5 years, and stood to the other side of me was a retailer who owned 7 stores. And for me, it always seemed like he was away from the business. He managed to do that. So we had just an open conversation about what he was doing and a little bit of peer-to-peer learning, and went away and had a chat with one of my colleagues about what we could try and do to try and make a little bit of a difference. So we came up with this idea of, wouldn't it be great if we could highlight this issue and give somebody the opportunity to take some time away? So Win the Weekend came about from that. We were absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of entries that we had. So we had nearly 1,000 people, 1,000 retailers entered this competition. So a bit of an unprecedented number, way above what we thought that we would reach.
That's an incredible number.
Yeah, absolutely delighted with it. We've got Sea Talk's very own Paul Chima is going to help us with running the store for the weekend, along with myself and some of the SBF GB&I team as well. So we'll manage this store, give the retailer who has now been selected, the winner, give them some much needed time off and relaxation with their loved ones.
That's amazing. And before I start to bring this to a close, then you mentioned with the Win the Weekend competition, you're giving retailers and store owners a chance just to step away and take that much needed breather. I know from talking to retailers, and I'm sure you've had these conversations as well, that an awful lot of people, they feel very close to their business. And very often they struggle with the idea of delegating. Even if they trust their staff implicitly, the idea of stepping away is very challenging. Do you personally have any advice for retailers on perhaps how to prepare to step away and delegate, or how to feel more comfortable with delegating for a short time?
Yeah, we did some independent research on the back of the ACS findings, and we saw that a large part of retailers say that they really struggle to devote less than an hour a week to training staff about the running of their store. So the key outtake for us is that of all the barriers that are taking this time off to sort of take time away from the business, is not being able to leave other staff members in charge of the business. So for us, that really highlights a need for more training across the sector.
Training, of course, with their well-being and their
absolutely.
With their well-being in mind. Absolutely right. Andy, I wish I had more time. This is a huge conversation that we could never do justice to completely in this conference alone. So we'd love to talk more about this another day. But definitely. For now, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. In a minute, I'm just going to bring everybody back for one last segment. Thank you so much, Andy, for coming
on. Cheers, Jake. Thank you.
And everybody's back. First of all, thank you to all three of you for coming on. It's been wonderful to talk to you. As I just said, this is a far bigger conversation than this brief 20 minutes can possibly allow for us to have. But it's an important one, and it's one that we absolutely should keep having as a sector and as an industry. It's beyond important for us to tackle these issues. And so before we go, even if you repeat yourself and just hammer home a point that you really want to get in there, I'm going to ask each of you in turn very quickly, what would be your best top tip for retailers and people in the industry to look after their well-being and manage their stress and their mental health? I'm going to start with Marguerite.
If I can, Jake, I want to flip it slightly and say that I think that so many retailers, small retailers, are actually unsung heroes of the mental health community. Because one of the things that's important to recognise is that for many people, going into a local shop and having face-to-face contact with somebody like Alpesh can be the only contact that they have with somebody that day. They might be lonely, they might be isolated, they might be depressed. And actually, our small retailers play such an important role in giving those people much needed human contact. So I think that's something that really needs to be recognised and celebrated. You might not know it, Alpesh, but somebody who comes into your shop, you might be the only person that smiles at them. You might be the only person that they talk to. You might be the face that they look forward to seeing. And I think lots of people don't recognise actually that they can have a significant impact on the community around them, and that our small shopkeepers play such a vital role in that community engagement.
I agree completely. I think that's so valuable to people. It's such a valuable service that we provide. Alpesh, I've got to let you jump in on the back of that.
No, it's very kind of you to say, and highlighting obviously what impact retailers have. But I think for me, there's probably two things. One is for retailers to find that balance. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, but for example, when you go home, if you want to spend a little bit of time doing some work, but then mentally just shutting off or try to shut off, easier said than done, whether it's like not looking at your mobile phone before you go to bed or checking emails, just stop, do something to distract you and kind of unwind. And secondly, is also just making sure you're speaking to your team as well, because obviously retailers are, under obviously a lot of tension all the time, but it's also the team as well. And it's also important to look after them as well, because on the flip side, they do look after the business and are the biggest asset to retailers. So it's a bit of looking after them as well, and speaking to them will go a long way.
Alpesh, thank you so much. Andy, anything from you, mate?
I just think this retailer community is amazing. It's massive. They are such a good support network to each other as well. So make sure that you're reaching out to each other. I think I've heard a great comment that together, individually you're a bit of string, but together you're a big strong rope. I think that's great, and you're all there for each other. So reach out. There's a lot of people who are in the same boat or have been in that boat and have known how to navigate out of any tricky place that they've been in. So yeah, just keep talking to each other.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Andy. And on the subject of reaching out before we end the conference, our friends at Grocery Aid are always here to help. If you scan this QR code, you can add their Grocery Aid Day on the 10th of May to your calendar, where you can join them to hear more from them and their colleagues about their free welfare services and how to access them. And if you are struggling with workload, with stress, with your own well-being, you can call the number on screen right now. It is completely free and completely confidential, 24/7, 365 days a week. And they are here to help you with no judgment. They are here to support you and your well-being. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us for our mental health and well-being conference. I'm sure we'll be talking about this subject again at some point in the future. But for now, we're going to sign off. Thank you. We'll see you soon.